In this video, we're going to explore what is exactly the reset coordinates and how to use the transform panel we have here. So we have some cone, and the cone are going to point to a direction here. The problem is, how can I make that the cone are going to face the x-axis, for example? So you might be tempted to deactivate the cloner, take your cloner here, and then you're going to just rotate it. So let's rotate this way, holding shift to constrain to 90 degrees. So this is pointing in this direction. Now let's see what happens when I activate back the cloner. And you can see our cloner just resetted to its value. So why is that? Actually, if you take your cloner here and you change anything, you can see it's just going to ignore the value. It's even worse if you try to move it. So I deactivated again the cloner. I'm going to move it this way, for example. So this is it. Now let's activate our cloner, and it's back to its original position. Why is that? That's because of the option we have here on the reset coordinates. If you just untick that, you'll see that it's going to work. And now you can take your cloner here and move it, and everything is going to move accordingly. So why is this option activated by default? Well, it's difficult to explain right now, but you should keep it activated because many effects are not going to work unless you reset the coordinates. So it just do what it does, what it says. If you reset the coordinates, it's going to take your cloner and put each coordinate to 0. The same thing as if you just hit right click here, right click, and it's going back to its original place. Okay, of course, you can just ignore this behavior and uncheck this and do it by hand. The right way to orient an object should be if you have a primitive. If you go to the cone, you will see that we have an orientation because this is a parametric object. So if you wanted to move, to point toward the x-axis, you just need to change here to x-axis, and that's it. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Another way is going back to y, would be to go to the cloner. And inside the cloner, you can use the transform panel. So the transform panel is just going to change the coordinate of all the object inside. So this way you can just orient it using this value. So not this one, to 90 degrees. And that's it. And you could orient it another way, like that. Okay, so let's go back to 0. You could also offset everything like that and change the size of all the elements at the same time. Okay, it's very different from the behavior here, which is cumulative. So here, if I change the x value, you can see they're all changing. And here, if I just change this value, you can see they're going to incrementally change. Yet another way to orient something would be to take your object, your cone for example here, and you're going to put it inside a null object. You're going to group it. So Alt-G to create a group. It's inside a null object. And now this is the null object, which has its coordinate resetted to 0, thanks to that. Okay. Now if you go back to your null object, just open it and go back to your cone object. Now if you move your cone or orient it, it's going to work because the reset coordinates are going to apply to the null object. So that's an important trick that's going to allow you to orient your object the way you want.